Picture this. It is January. You are fired up. You have 10 different habits you want to set this year, from meditate more to quit sugar to ventures such as podcasts, businesses, or books. If by March things have fizzled, by June you're having a hard time remembering what half of them are, and by December you're sort of giving up on the idea of goal setting in general, should you even bother next year setting resolutions? The problem is not that you did not want it enough. It's that you did not evaluate the scope of your goals, their size, their time commitment. And today we're going to calculate those so that we can create a balanced goal portfolio and achieve more this year. We're going to be talking about 4 different types of goals and how, if you don't know what type of goal you're setting, it'll make a lot of sense as soon as I give examples. It can really throw you off, particularly around New Year's resolutions, birthdays, where you might be setting several goals at once. So one type of goal is a project-based goal. And this might be something like writing a book or going through all your belongings before moving. It has several steps in it, but it has a clear beginning, middle, and end. Even if it takes several months, it's something that has a completion date. Whereas something that I call a consistency goal does not have that same closure, or particularly not for a while. So one of these might be someone wanting to max out their 401k or IRA in a given year. So that requires a lot of budget allocation and habit change and steps day after day after day for an entire year. There's not that, oh, well, I do this, and then it's done. And that requires a different type of energy. It's more of that marathon energy versus that sprint or push to get something done. Now, another type of goal is what I call the afternoon goals. This is like a project. It's something that has a beginning, middle, and end, but it's something that you could knock off pretty quickly. Maybe replacing some light bulbs in your house to an energy efficient kind. That requires doing a little bit of research, getting the light bulbs, changing them, finding the right way to dispose of the other ones. It is something that could be contained within a couple hours theoretically. So it's almost a to-do list item, but I've recently realized some people, when they set goals, sometimes they are almost like a to-do list item. Something such as, I want to plan a weekend getaway with my friends. And I think that's beautiful. Not all goals have to be about starting a business or writing a book or going through all your belongings. They can be smaller things. In fact, that's kind of what I want this episode to be about, is having sort of a tiered system of several types of goals can make our lists less overwhelming. If you had 10 habit-based or consistency goals for the year, it could be really hard. It could take up a lot of bandwidth, because if you're trying to train for a triathlon, something that might take a long time, many months of consistent effort, and max out those savings accounts and read 20 books this year and fill in the blank, things that take little bits of effort, but day after day after day, you might even have a hard time remembering all 10 off the top of your head. It's hard to exert ourselves consistently in so many areas. But if we take something, let's imagine this year, okay, you have the fitness goal and the money goal, and maybe those are consistent throughout the whole year. But then you have the project goal of going through all of those belongings. That actually is less ambitious than it sounds, because that is something that maybe summer is a little slower for you at work. You could tackle that project during the slow season. So projects, while they require a bigger push at a certain point in time, the fact that they have closure means that they can be staggered throughout the year. I'll link another video down on this below, but the main idea of it that I eventually get to towards the middle of the video is that often people that seem really impressive, they're not doing a lot of these impressive things at the same time. They have staggered their goals across different months, years, or even phases of their life. So then you read this really impressive bio and you're thinking, how did they have time to do all that? They did not do it all at the same time. And that applies here too. I just notice sometimes when I see people's list of goals, sometimes there's a really nice diversified portfolio of different types of goals, different ones that require a certain amount of time or energy or ones that might be phased in or out at different points in the year, versus some that I just see the list of maybe 10 goals and I think, how are you possibly going to do all this in a given year? They require a lot of effort all year. Here is a way to make this extremely practical, and I'm going to use a to-do list as an example. When I write my to-do list, I usually budget out how long I expect each task to take. So for instance, shooting the edits for this video, as you guys can see, I don't know if you can tell, my hair's a little bit different. This is shot on a different day. So editing the main footage, writing out what I want to add, adding it in, doing all of this, I budgeted about 2.5 hours to finish up the edits on this video. Now, it's actually going to take more, but the point is that I blocked off, okay, I didn't just write that on my to-do list, I blocked off how long I thought that would take. Then reviewing some emails that I need to for some tasks tomorrow, 30 minutes. And always writing out how long I expect each task to take helps me realize if I've put too much in a given day. Now, you can do that for a certain year. You might have a certain project. Let's use the example of a friend of mine just submitted a short story for a competition. This took about a month of consistent effort after work hours, doing edits, deciding which version she liked better after having a couple different ones. It was something that was, let's say it's a project goal, and that was a month of concerted effort. Then another goal someone might stagger in, let's keep using some of the examples we used before. Training for a triathlon. I don't know why I used such a big goal there compared to like a 5K, but let's go with it. Sometimes people have big goals. So that might take about 4 to 5 months of training consistently, assuming you're pretty conditioned already and not starting from zero. You're doing some biking, swimming, and running leading up to this. Then you have a goal of doing that saving amount. That actually doesn't take that much extra time, with the exception of maybe you decide to cook more meals. So it takes about an extra 2 hours a week. So you could write next to each goal, and I have this on the screen, but if you're listening, I want to describe it pretty well. Next to each goal, you might have how long you're going to be putting in effort towards it and how much effort it would require. So short story competition, -1 month, -1 to 2 hours after work, 4 days a week. Let's say it took about that long. I don't actually know how long it took. That's probably a pretty good estimate. Training for a triathlon, 4 to 5 months of 7 to 10 hours a week of effort between cross-training, mobility, other stuff they have to do as well. Now you'll look over this and you might get sort of a visceral sense of, oh, this is a little bit too much, without even really having to add it up. But if you're more of a numbers person, you're not going to take, I used to do this, I used to be a wild person, and I would take, okay, there's 168 hours in a week, and this is how long I take to shower, and this is how long I have to sleep, and this is how long I have to commute to my classes. And I try to budget every single moment. We're not trying to do that here. We're just trying to get a sense of, how are you staggering these goals throughout the year? Which ones fall into which of these categories we talked about so far? We still have the fourth category, which we'll get to at the end. And do you feel a sense of this is overwhelming? Do you need to push some to another time, like next year, or just drop them if they're not as high of a priority? You might even rank these and put the higher priority ones towards the beginning of the year. Seeing this visually can help you start to transform this list into this list. And one important thing to remember with all of this is that we underestimate how long tasks will take. I did it here. I thought this would take me 2.5 hours to edit and finish this video, and it is definitely going to take 5, twice as long. So do budget that in, that often, yes, tasks expand to the time allotted. I know that there's that whole thing in the time management space of not allowing too much time to do something, have constraints, but also realize tasks take longer, projects take longer than we anticipate. And I have a whole video on that, on the planning fallacy, that I will link down below for you if you want to take a listen to that. Now back to the framework at hand with a little more on afternoon goals. Those smaller goals that hadn't even occurred to me until lately, I think that they can give us a real bolstering effect. So someone planning a weekend getaway with some of their friends they haven't seen in a couple years, that might seem small, but it could really contribute to their overall life category or value of spending quality present time with loved ones. So even though it only took a couple hours one afternoon to plan, it doesn't make it any less valuable or less important. And it does give us a sense of victory of, oh, that's one of the things I wanted to achieve this year, and I did it. That can help energize you for some of your other goals because you feel that sense of victory and accomplishment. Now, the last fourth type of goal, and I'm sure there's more, but these are just the ones that popped into my head when I was scripting this. And of course, comment down below if you can think of some other types of goals that I missed. And we're talking about in terms of scope and time, not not just, a fitness goal versus a money goal. It's like, I get it. There's different categories and there's like SMART goals and other types. I just mean in terms of scope, like how long things take, how much effort they take. That's really what we're talking about here. Now we're going to talk about one other goal here, and that is just simply a not clear goal. So maybe you have the objective to be more grateful this year. And if you just want to think of that as a word or a mantra that hangs out in the back of your mind to layer appreciation as a lens that you see the world through this year, and if that works for you, my goodness, rock on. But if you set the goal of being more grateful this year and you notice 3 months later nothing's changed there, that might be because the goal just isn't clear which of these it even falls into. Someone that's trying to be more mindful could have a project within that could be going to a meditation retreat versus the more consistent ongoing version of that would be meditating every day. So sometimes even the same goal could be approached in different ways. But if we made that gratitude into one of these buckets, it might be having a daily gratitude practice, for example, where for 2 minutes a day, you write down 5 things you're grateful for, feel it, soak it in. And that's taking a goal from an unclear goal and moving it into one of these categories so that there's a clear action related to it. So let's end this with an activity. I want you to pull out your goals from the most recent time you wrote them. Maybe it was your birthday. Maybe it was New Year's. Maybe it was just a random time you were inspired at a coffee shop with a napkin or a notebook. But let's pull out your recent goals you wrote. And let's see which of them fall into which category. Which of them are habits that you want to do consistently for a long time? Which of them are projects? Which of them are things you could knock out in an afternoon? And which of them are so not exactly dialed in or clear that you couldn't even put them into one of these buckets? But let's break them down. How many of them fall into different ones? And then option to go a little bit further and see how much effort does each of them take. If you don't feel like doing the math, you could even just sort of give it a 5-point scale, with 5 being a really, really high effort goal that takes a lot of time and energy, and 1 being a very low energy, low effort, low time commitment goal. And just see how overwhelming is this? Did you overestimate how much you could do in a certain time frame, whether that was a quarterly goal or a yearly goal? And then ask yourself, how well did you do in this given time frame? How much of it had to do with not really thinking about the scope of goals? And how can you shift these to be able to have more success in the coming quarter or year so that we can rewrite that story that we talked about from the beginning? Come January, you feel aligned and you feel that this is doable. You know that you can conquer the year ahead of you. You, in March, still have that list handy. You haven't lost it somewhere or flushed it down the toilet. You have your list of goals and you're making progress on them, adjusting them as you need. Come June, you're shocked. Whoa, this is a year you're actually sticking to stuff. You knocked out a few afternoon goals, maybe a project goal, and half your habits are sticking. Hey, that's pretty freaking good. For the ones that didn't, what do we need to pivot to get there? Or do we just push them? Are they not that important right now? Or do we not have the bandwidth? Come December, you start to gain confidence and trust in yourself that you can follow through on the goals you set. It's not about being perfect. It's not about following through with every single thing we set. It's just about investing like we do into a bank account, little by little, into the things that matter to us so that we feel in congruence with our values. Thank you for being here. If you found this helpful, if you are listening to the YouTube version, hitting subscribe really, really helps. If you're listening to the podcast version, hitting follow so that when I upload, you will see it. I would love to hear from you. If you have thoughts on this, you can drop them in the comments. And if you would like a good follow-up to this, other than the ones that I mentioned during the meat of the video that might be relevant, last week's episode was on if you should tell other people about your goals and if that makes us more or less likely to achieve them if we tell other people. And that could be a good follow-up on this because it's also on goal setting and achievement. We'll see you next Monday. I hope you have an awesome week.